Hi Joanna, I'm Rita Lee, the editor-in-chief for Yahoo Life South Asia. Thank you for this wonderful interview.
Hi, I'm Joanna Dong, and I'm a bilingual jazz pop singer. I'm also sometimes a TV host, and also sometimes an actor, and recently I'm now a concert director.
So tell us a little bit more about your Lunar New Year theme concert. Why Lunar New Year?
I think it just so happens that when the organizers invited me to do a concert here, it was this period. And I was like, oh, we're so near to the Lunar New Year period, we might as well make that a theme. And part of my own journey in my career was that I used to spend many years during the Chinese New Year period singing at malls with my band. And we used to do a lot of jazzy covers of Chinese New Year music. And I always thought that that repertoire was very fun, you know, and I always loved the festive season. So this was my opportunity to elevate that repertoire onto a much bigger stage.
And why the title, You Must Believe in Spring? It's very uplifting, I feel.
Do you feel that way? My friends were like saying, oh, it sounds a bit preachy, like you must believe in spring, you know, or like very auntie like, yeah, you must believe in spring, you know, depending on how you hear it. But it originates from the Mandarin title. So I came up with the Mandarin title first, which is Liu An Hua Ming. It means, it's a description of springtime where the willows are dark and lush and the flowers bloom brightly against the dark willows. So it's a beautiful picture of spring. And it comes from like an old Chinese poem that's now evolved to become a popular saying, which is 山穷水尽疑无路，柳暗花明又一村, which means the mountains are barren, the rivers run dry. It looks like there's no way ahead, there's no path ahead. And yet, next thing you know, you see a beautiful springtime picture, dark willows, bright flowers, and behold, another village ahead. So it's this sense that if you're a weary traveler and you think that you're at the end of the road, there's no hope ahead. And then the next thing you see, there's a village, you know, it's springtime, the flowers are blooming. So it's this sense of we're going through something tough, but hope is right around the corner. And I think that's perfect for this current Lunar New Year that we're facing.
Yes.
We've already had one pretty challenging Chinese New Year last year. And unfortunately, things are looking up, but also feel a little tentative. That's where we're at. So I wanted this to be a celebration. It's a joyous occasion, but at the same time to have some measure of gravitas and to acknowledge that this is still a difficult time. And so also then the English title comes from a jazz standard by Michel Legrand. It's called You Must Believe in Spring. And it's the same feeling that you have to trust that the road feels tough right now, but spring it's coming. It's just round the bend.
Wow, it sounds really, really hopeful. I think it can be applied to any of us going through this very harsh time as well, right?
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's a bittersweet kind of celebration, you know, now, whether it was Christmas or the upcoming Lunar New Year, it's always I'm so glad we can be with each other, but also you feel a sense of like, I wish we could be with more.
Yes.
So this year it's limited to 5 people still at Chinese New Year here in Singapore. But the good thing is, for my concert, it is a concert hall of up to 1,000 people. There will be safe distancing, so you'll be sitting in pairs and dispersed. But if you can't, you know, reunite with your family at the same table, it's a good option to consider reuniting at least in the same hall and experiencing the same concert.
And surrounded by beautiful music, of course.
Oh, yeah. Yes, and flowers, or rather a beautiful arrangement on stage.
All right, so there'll be a mix of, you know, the stage set as well as like your costumes. I think everything's just going to be very bright and beautiful and bold.
I sure hope so. I mean, from what I see on the concept sketches, it's going to be beautiful.
Okay. Did you also impart some of like your suggestions and your wants for the whole look of the concert?
Yeah, I'm very, very involved. I don't see how I could be more involved in this show. So this is my first time as a concert director.
Oh, wow.
So I'm not only the performing artist, I'm also the concert director. And my husband is co-directing with me. So I think in every sense of the word, this is kind of as close to like my personal aesthetics as a show would get.
Yeah.
So everything from the concept, from the kind of looks I want, whether it's the outfit, whether it's the floral set design, to the themes, the spirit of how the music should flow and all that. Yes, most of it comes from me. But I feel like we've left enough room also for my collaborators to interpret my brief in their own way, because they're all professionals in their own right. I could never do their job for them. So I'm just very happy with the process so far, because everything that they've come back to me with, I've really liked. So I feel like communication has been pretty good so far. Yeah,
Wow.
I'm quite pleased with that.
That's pretty interesting, because you did mention you are as well very hands-on with the production and working with your husband. So how do you manage the communication with your loved one, as well as being a business partner somehow, in that sense?
This is the first time my husband and I are actually undertaking such a big project together. Previously, we met doing theatre. So we do come from a theatrical background, but we're both actors to begin with. So we have a lot of stage experience, but on the stage, not so much behind the scenes. So this is a learning curve for both of us. And also we've never had to negotiate anything like that, putting up a show together at this scale. So yeah, it definitely has its challenges, in the sense that when things get stressful, that's when my temper, anyway, my husband is very, very chill in general, which is great. But in general, when I'm very tense, then the decibels of my voice will go up, right? But the silver lining to that is, most people at work, most of my colleagues, seldom see my temper anyways. And it's actually my husband who has the most experience with handling me at my worst. So in that sense, he's very well equipped. He knows how to deal with me, how to speak to me to calm me down and get me to just articulate what is it that is frustrating me, for example. So those are the things that help. And it also calls back to mind when we had to do our wedding. So we organized our own wedding party about almost 10 years ago.
Oh wow!
So this feels familiar on many fronts, where he's basically the one telling me, I see your vision and I would really like to make this happen for you, but we kind of also have to accept that our resources are limited, and there's some things that may not happen as you imagine. So he's there to temper my ambition in that sense, which I think is great. I really need it. He's the voice of reason, in other words, and my security blanket.
It sounds great, because you definitely need that partnership of respect, professionalism. It sounds like a yin and yang.
Yeah, but he's very mindful. So he's like, I must tell you upfront, if I accept, your invitation to be co-director, we must draw healthy boundaries between our domestic life and the professional arena. So he was very mindful, and he expressed it very clearly, and I was like, yes, you're right. And so yeah, I think these things are important to communicate.
Of course, yes. So drawing back to the whole pandemic and 2 difficult years that we have, how did you maintain your mental well-being, most important, and with your husband especially? Yeah.
These past 2 years have been incredibly difficult for anyone who's in the live performance entertainment industry. But I was glad that I actually started going to therapy before the pandemic began. I think at the peak of my career, so after Sing China in 2017, that was really my big break, and I was incredibly busy. I had all these opportunities that I never had before. There were many career highs, in 2018 and 2019. So I had my first personal full-length concert in 2018. I toured that concert to various cities around the region. I sang for National Day. So all these high-profile things, and it was a very exciting time. But it was also, towards the end of 2019, I started to realize that something was amiss. I in spite of achieving all my career goals in spite of, being very well loved by friends, by my husband, and having a stable relationship at home, I still found myself to be really down, really blue. And there were days that were so debilitating, like I found that I couldn't get out of bed. Even though I had so many great reasons, right? Life was so exciting. So I realized that this can't be healthy or right. And that's when I decided to consult a therapist. And that's when we realized that I had a bit of depression and I was struggling with several issues with my mental health, right? So going to therapy before the pandemic, I think, was the best decision I made, because I was already in a much improved place, and I also started to understand my own mental health and my own needs before the true crisis hit me in 2020. Yeah, so that's what I've been doing, going to therapy. But also, going to therapy gives me the language to also then express what I'm going through to the people who matter, which is my husband, my friends, my family. They were very concerned too. They were like, what's wrong? What could be wrong? I mean, nobody could see how anything in my life could be wrong, but that's exactly what it is. Yeah. It's not necessarily just external factors. It's also just an accumulation of experiences throughout my life that I had not properly processed. It could be chemical imbalances. There are a lot of complicating factors. So I did that, went to therapy. I also finally started kind of having a more proper exercise regime. So to be honest, I really don't enjoy exercise. Really? It's something that I don't enjoy doing, right? But I used to be very active for work, because when I perform, I sing, I dance. That's actually quite aerobic. I used to travel a lot for work, and all that is very active. So I didn't have to purposefully exercise. My work life was active. But because of the pandemic, all that came to a halt. So I also had to then finally concede that I needed to exercise. Yeah, so I have a trainer who helps me with that. So I'm very lucky in the sense that I have the resources to do these things, right? To seek therapy, to have a trainer, and I'm very privileged and thankful for that. Yeah.
I think it's so important to call out the fact that you took that one brave, bold step, to seek help. And it's also very important to share this with your fans, that it's so important to look after yourself as well. Right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the main things I feel is really important is to destigmatize seeking counseling or seeking therapy. It's really just like going to the GP if you're not feeling well. It really shouldn't be something that we feel like, oh, you must be off your rockers before you go and seek help, right? The sooner you can get on that path, then the sooner you start to feel better, feel more in control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned exercising, and I noticed as well from your IG, you do a lot of beautiful flower arrangements cooking. Is that what you've been keeping yourself busy besides performing?
I think many of us discovered, this new life skill, which is cooking during the pandemic, because restaurants were closed, and also, it's very expensive to keep ordering in, right? And also, what are you going to do with all this time that you now have stuck at home? Yes. So yes, I started becoming a lot more domestic. I learned to make my first proper fried rice, during the pandemic. Things like that. And yeah, I really do think my culinary skills have improved significantly, these 2 years. Not amazing. My mom and my mother-in-law, they're both amazing cooks. So I'm nowhere at their level, but I feel like I'm slowly understanding and enjoying the process more. So I've been doing a lot of meal for ones, right? Because my husband does still have to go to work, so I'm alone at home a lot. So the meal for ones are kind of comforting. Like if you have to eat alone, then at least you can eat well. It helps with your health as well.
Yeah. Has the pandemic changed your priorities?
Oh, that's an interesting one that I've not fully contemplated. I don't think the pandemic has changed my priorities. Rather, it has reaffirmed that my priorities have mostly been in the right place. I think family time, has always been quite important to me, especially with my husband, especially on festive occasions. So to date, I have not missed a reunion dinner with my family, in spite of, being involved in an industry that usually keeps you very busy throughout all these festive seasons. So I have missed Christmas, I have missed New Year, the New Year's Eve, but I haven't missed reunion dinner. So, and now, because of the pandemic and gatherings are so much more precious and hard to come by, I cherish it even more. So I'm very, very glad that, I've kind of made time for this. But also that when it was the time to travel and work and seize the day and seize those opportunities, I'm glad that I was also quite bold in doing them. So I have no regrets. When I needed to travel for work, I went. And I've seen some amazing places that now, it almost grieves me to say this, I don't know if I will get to return. Because some of those places are quite hard to get to, and we would have required, even then, a lot of clearance, a lot of visa applications. And right now, with the pandemic going on, I imagine it will be even more challenging to visit these places. So I'm glad I went. And in that time, I did sacrifice some, time with family. So I'm also glad that in the pandemic, I managed to make up for some of that. So everything works out somehow, I suppose.
So circling back to, the essence of reunion, and you mentioned about how families, friends, loved ones can also gather at your concert, and that's how you will also, bring forth the essence of Lunar New Year. So, tell us a little bit more about the songs, the arrangements that you have at concerts. You mentioned it might be different.
I think anyone who is familiar with my music will know that I seldom ever sing the classics the original way. And Chinese New Year songs are like a whole genre of classics by themselves, right? They're very well loved, and I mean, most of us will kind of know at least the chorus to the familiar Chinese New Year songs if you're a Chinese person who celebrates it. So when something is as classic and as well loved as Chinese New Year songs, then you have to be very careful with how you approach it. I've also had to learn the hard way that some people really find some songs so precious that you cannot touch them. They're untouchable, almost sacred. So you can't really rearrange them too much. And I understand it now. I see why that happens. Chinese New Year songs, on the other hand, I think there's more room for interpretation, only because we've heard it so much and done in so many different ways. So we've heard techno, versions in some malls or in the night markets, the Chinese New Year festival markets. We've heard it already. So I feel like we're more accustomed to varying interpretations. So I think a jazzy approach shouldn't be too out of the ordinary, not too out there. So we'll have that. We've also got some light, effervescent and electronic rearrangements as well. We've also got original Lunar New Year song, right? So I released one last year called Kwai Le Le Le, which I wrote the lyrics to, and the original melody came from actually a Christmas song by one of my favorite bands. They're called The Bird and the Bee. So we've got a whole range, but I will also be doing quite a lot of songs that are not Chinese New Year related at all. But to me, they help to kind of tell the story that I want to tell, which is more about, like I said, contemplating what we've been through the past 2 years and how we can keep hopeful. And that's also why it's centered around spring, because spring of the 4 seasons, spring is the hopeful one. After you've survived the harshness of winter, spring is what we all look forward to, right? But of course, the other thing that I also want to acknowledge is that as Singaporeans living in a tropical climate, it's either wet or dry. Right? What does spring mean to Singaporeans? We don't really have the same appreciation as somebody who comes from a temperate climate. And I think COVID gives us the perfect, metaphor or a perfect similarity to winter. So I kind of will term the past 2 years what we're going through as the COVID winter. because we've never had to go through something harsh as a society, you know, as a nation before. So yeah, this is kind of what it feels like.
When you think of the word spring in your own words, you know, what do you think of?
I think it's budding. It's the beginning of something new, but it's still small and modest. So it's more like a candle flame rather than a blazing fire. It's a bud, not like full-on big blossoms, right? So spring has that sense that we're just coming out of it, and it's not like things are it's okay, you know, like YOLO. Yeah, it's not that yet, but it's the like, you're just starting to have a little smile on your face. I mean, a little, literally spring in your step, right? Just a small bounce. So that's kind of what it is. We're not at like the
not the
point yet. No, not
stage
that yet. But I think it's a nice place to be. Yeah, I think it's something just a little warm and fuzzy about springtime.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's so positive and, you know, uplifting in the way you create this whole narrative, and I really hope your fans will, you know, feel it through your songs as well.
I hope so too. I mean, maybe it's all in my mind and I think that we will communicate it, but we won't know till they come. And actually that's the biggest part of the puzzle. So as a director, I'm putting all these elements in the show together, right? And in my mind, you know, that's how it will be. But we really need the audiences to come in to complete the puzzle, because there's no point telling a story if no one is there to respond to it. And that's the difference between, you know, a live concert and, you know, an online streamed show. In a live concert, I can feel them breathing. I can hear the ripples of laughter, you know, or I can even like feel their eyes rolling if I'm telling a corny joke. But that's live shows. And the pace, and, you know, will really feel more like a conversation. Whereas like when it's on a video, it's really one way. I'm imagining their response, but it's a lot less organic, and the rhythm of the whole show doesn't feel, you know, as lively or as connected.
Yes, as an entertainer, you do feed off the energy from the crowd.
Absolutely,
right?
And I always listen to them. And if I feel they're not responding to this joke, I'm going to move on, right? Or if this story, I feel like, I think it's starting to feel preachy, I'm going to adjust it as like the tone and everything is adjusted on the spot, because I'm really speaking to them.
Yes.
And I can't do that if it's a live stream or a video.
Yeah. Well, it just sounds like you're encompassing, you know, even the role of a director, you're even a comedian, you know, you're entertaining people on stage.
But I mean, I feel like once in a while you just have to lighten the mood, right? So there are like, you know, little observations that I've made. So
we are nearing to a few of our last few questions, and I wanted to draw back to, you know, your experience with Sing China and coming back here and doing all these interesting projects. And would you have any advice for aspiring singers, you know, coming from all your wealth of experience?
I think usually I give the same advice, which is you have to trust that no time that you've ever spent consciously learning something is ever wasted. And I say this because I had a little bit of a roundabout journey in my own career. You know, I spent many years doing live gigs, but I also went and did theatre, and then later on I explored some TV hosting. And then all this has nothing to do with the fact that I graduated with a degree in sociology. So it feels like all these things are a little bit piecemeal. But where I am in my career, I see how none of that time that I spent learning all these new things have ever been wasted. And they all serve me so well now as I try and direct my show for the first time, as I think about how society is coping with something as big as the pandemic. You know, a lot of all my experiences become a part of who I am as an artist, my voice as a public figure, for example. So, you know, the main thing sometimes I observe also that a lot of my musician friends, they love to spend hours playing games, and you might think that that has absolutely nothing to do, no bearing on like their abilities as a singer, right? But I can tell you, if you are consciously learning something, if you are learning to strategize, if you're learning teamwork, while you're playing these games, right? Or, it's just something that you genuinely are passionate about. Somehow it will come back and it'll serve you. And I think I realized that my friends who play games, my singer friends who play games, they have great audience engagement with their fans during the pandemic, and then they live stream their gaming. And it just became another avenue for them to connect with their audiences. So like I said, it's just about whether you are consciously learning anything from what you're doing. And it doesn't matter at all what it is. It could be a sport. Yes. It could be gardening, it could be whatever, You will grow as long as you're growing. I think that's all that's important.
For sure. I mean, it's also like gaming is exercising your left, right brain.
Exactly.
It's a creative process.
We don't, sometimes like we think, what kind of skills should I be doing? What music should I be listening to? Often I realize it's quite helpful to step away from the music sometimes, to do something else to do. My dear friend Charlie Lim loves boxing. He says it's really helped him with his focus, with his discipline, with strategy, with rhythm. Yeah. And also apparently his chops as a musician helps him as a boxer too. Like he's got very unexpected rhythms when he's boxing, so his opponents are a little like off guard. Right? So it's really fascinating.
So interesting.
But mainly is just try to grow. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Joanna. I was wondering, do you have any last words for your fans about your concert? Any messages you'd like to relay?
Honestly, I understand, with Omicron, there's a lot of anxieties. And so I want to say, make decisions that make sense for you, for my respective audiences. I have a lot of fan base who are actually elderly. So take your doctor's advice, you know your own body, and I love you and I respect your choices anyway. Whether they come and join me in the concert hall or we meet again much later down the road, it's all good with me. I just want them to have a happy and safe and healthy Chinese New Year celebration. That's all.